All right, everybody. This should be hopefully a good, useful video podcast discussion, basically about what we do and why we do it in plain English. So, linchpin in plain English. And in plain English meaning, people tell me every now and then they want some sort of piece of content or media or something that they can share with their friends who maybe aren't immersed in a fitness journey yet, to share with them to understand what the heck it is that we do in words that make sense to them, to maybe try to get more people living a healthy lifestyle. So hopefully this is that piece of content that you can share with your friends. So, at Linchpin, the basis of what we do is steeped in the CrossFit methodology. Okay. Now there have been ways in which I have, massaged or I believe optimized that, but largely speaking, it's based on the CrossFit methodology. Constantly varied, functional movements at high intensity. And those are the words that if you share them with your friends, they don't know what the heck that means. So, okay, friends, let's dive into what that means in plain English. So, constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. First of all, a lot of people think that what we do, whether it's Linchpin or something else, that it's a conditioning program. It's probably myth number one. It's not a conditioning program. It is a strength and conditioning program, both at the same time. We're greedy. We want it all, and that's what you'll get. And we have people ferociously, terrifyingly strong is what happens when they follow what we're doing here at Linchpin. So it's a strength and conditioning program. Let's dive into each segment and just demystify some things. Okay, so constantly varied, what does that mean? Well, if you're doing what I grew up doing, like an old school bodybuilding routine, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you live your life doing relatively the same movements on the same days of the week, and you do usually 3 to 4 sets of about 10 reps, and you rest a minute between each, and that's what you do, well, it makes sense that you're getting good at that, but you're not going to be good at much else. You have this very regimented, concrete, blocked off training program that isn't really indicative to how the world or sport or anything else works. If you always separate your quote-unquote cardio from your lifting, you always do one first and always do the other one second, and never the two shall meet, well, what's going to happen when life mixes those two together for you? Now, this is very obvious if you're a police, firefighter, military, first responder, but even just a regular human being. There's a lot of things you do in the real world that don't just require you to lift something with no heart rate, but they don't just require you to have a high heart rate and not be doing work. Like, a lot of times life forces you to use your muscle groups, to be strong, to be doing work while you're out of breath. And if you don't train that way, why in the world would you ever think that you would be able to perform well when the situation arises? So that's one of the things we mean by constantly varied. There's a phrase that says, you fail at the margins of your experience. And what that means is, if you tell me, you give me the blueprint of what you do for your workouts all the time, if they're largely static, then if I look at what you do all the time, you have given me the recipe to create something which will make you fail and make you look like you've never worked out because you live inside this little confined box. So the goal of what we do is to constantly push out those parameters of what you're capable of further and further and further, so that you have this huge range of capability that exists in the gym, outside of the gym, on the field of sport, the whole 9 yards. So that's wrapped into what constantly varied means. And for repetitions, back when I was just doing bodybuilding style work, I was always 3 sets of 10. Got really good at 3 sets of 10 and not much else. Had a terrible 1 rep because I never really went there. And if you gave me 100 reps of a lightweight to do, I would have imploded because I never did that. I was good at 3 sets of 10. So we do everything from heavy singles to over 100 repetitions when the load goes down, and everything in between. And that's the capacity that we develop. And we do cardio, engine work, if you will, biking, running, rowing, things of that nature. We do it by itself every now and then, But very often it's mixed in with weightlifting and mixed in with body weight movements, and then you develop this amazing capacity to do all kinds of physical endeavors, which is very handy. And an important thing to note is that when you hear the term constantly varied as part of what we do, varied does not mean random. So get that out of your mind. Varied does not mean random. Varied, constantly varied just means we're always deliberately, intentionally, and intelligently manipulating the training variables such as loading, number of sets or rounds, rep ranges, movement patterns, time domains, you name it. We're deliberately and intelligently manipulating those to produce this athlete that has such a wide range of capabilities. So that's a nice little encapsulation for your friends as to what constantly varied means. Now the next part, if you remember what I said initially, which was constantly varied is a critical thing, functional movements is a critical thing, and high intensity is a critical thing. We just chatted on the constantly varied, so now let's chat for your friends who aren't in this world. Functional movements, what the heck does that mean? Because everything's functional these days, right? I mean, it's just a buzzword. It's going to be in every commercial and every ad and everything in the world's functional. Well, it's not the case. When we say functional movements, we're talking usually multi-joint movements, lifts that are capable of doing a lot of work in a short period of time. So lifts that are able to produce a lot of power. You can lift a decent amount of loading. It doesn't take you long to do it. You can do a lot of work in a short period of time, produce a lot of power. That's one of the key indicators of a functional movement. We choose functional movements have a lot of transference to other movements, other capacities, and just basically life in general. We choose movements that are demanded by life as well as by sport. And what I mean by that is a deadlift is a good example. A deadlift is just picking something up off the ground. It's an absolutely mission critical training tool of every human being on the face of the planet, whether you have no interest in athletic endeavors or you love sports. That is just a head to toe mission critical strength building lift, and it's just picking something up off the ground. It doesn't have to be this eyeball bulging, crazy, body shaking 1 rep max. The deadlift is just a functional movement found in real life, whether it's a barbell, your child, a sack of groceries, whatever it happens to be. You're doing work in your yard, you're picking things up off the ground, you're deadlifting. Life forces you to do it, you can't avoid it, so you might as well know how to do it properly, and you might as well strengthen the musculature required, because you're not going to be able to avoid it. And the same thing could be said about squatting. Squatting is just going from a seated to a standing position, with or without a barbell. Again, you can't avoid it, so you might as well get good at it. And it's difficult with a functional movement to reduce it, to make it simpler without losing something, without losing the essence. So what I mean by that is, you might say, well, I don't want to squat. My doctor said squatting's bad, and so I'm going to do leg extension, leg curl, the leg press, 2 or 3 other things to quote unquote replace the squat. And then I'm going to build all the musculature that I think is needed. And then if I have to squat in the real world, I'll still be okay because I'm doing the leg press, the leg extension, the leg curl. That's not how it works. If you reduce the squat down to those pieces parts, you get good at the pieces parts, but you don't necessarily get good at the squat. It works one way, but it doesn't work the other. If you put a barbell on your back, and again, it doesn't matter what the loading is, okay, but you're squatting. You're doing the actual, real, functional movement that life and sport demands. You're squatting with a barbell. You will be able to hop on the leg press and the leg extension and be just fine. But if you only do the leg extension and the leg press, and then one day you decide to hop in with your friend who always back squats, you will not be good at the back squat. So it works one way, but it doesn't work the other way. And that's what we mean when we say these movements, these functional movements, can't really be reduced any simpler. And we do other things that just are how the human body moves. Running, jumping, pulling, climbing, you name it. Things that you're going to have to do here in planet life. And we do these functional movements that if you don't maintain them and train them, and if you cease to be capable at them, then you will cease to be a capable, functioning, independent living human being. And so what I mean by that for your friends outside the health and fitness world is, as you progress later in years, and maybe that seems far away right now, but it's coming for all of us, nobody goes to a nursing home, to an assisted care or living facility because they lost their ability to do the pec deck, or they lost their ability to do a seated calf raise. They go to the assisted care, shy of them having some other chronic disease, but if their other health markers are okay, we're talking functional capacity. You get put in the nursing home or the assisted care if you can't navigate stairs. You can't go from a seated to a standing position unassisted. You can't pick something up off the ground. If you happen to fall on the ground, you can't get up, etc., etc., etc. You can't manipulate your body in the world without somebody helping you. That means you have lost your capacity to do functional movements, multi-joint movements, irreducible movements, mission-critical movements. These are the ones that we train because they're that darn important. And these are the movements, like I said, that dominate sport, life, and everything else. And these movements, since you're not sitting on a machine, you're not doing the leg press, right? You have a barbell on your back. Well, when you're on the leg press, you're sitting in the leg press machine, and that doesn't require a lot of balance or midline stabilization. Largely speaking, the device is doing it for you. If you have a barbell on your back, you're not only training all the musculature of the lower body and the midline, but you also have to have the brain-body connection with your central nervous system. It's a thinking individual's lift. Balance is involved. Coordination is involved. The sequence in which you move your joints becomes very important. Same with the deadlift. So these functional movements have a brain-body connection that trains other mission-critical things to life, such as balance and coordination, that you're not getting sitting on a machine. So I think that would be something also, in just plain English, very important for your friends and family whom you're trying to get into a healthy lifestyle to understand with their movement selection. Makes a really big deal. Okay, the final piece of the trifecta, right, of the constantly varied, we touched on, functional movements we touched on, and now high intensity in plain English. High intensity can scare some folks, and understandably so. High intensity stings. And high intensity, relative to the individual, just means you working hard. At the end of the day, that's what it means. The person next to you might run a mile faster, they might lift more weight, etc., but those are their times and their loadings. If relative to your capacity, you're pushing yourself, you're working really hard, that's intensity for you. And so if you think, don't let the word high intensity scare you, okay? But the general theme on this is, if you think that you are going to optimize your health, improve your strength and conditioning, and you're not going to work hard to achieve that, you have been lied to. Period, end of story. You are not going to move the needle forward without effort. Hard work is what's going to be required. And that takes discipline, and that takes dedication. And to say anything else would be me lying to you. And at Linchpin, we don't lie to you. We tell you the truth, whether people want to hear it or not. You're going to have to work hard, and that's okay. You don't, again, because it doesn't matter what the clock or the clock says or the load on the bar means. What matters is your effort. The good news is you don't have to just burn it down every day. So don't let that high intensity thing fool you. That doesn't mean 100% maximal near-death experience in the gym every single day that you walk in. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, to oversimplify it to putting it into thirds, low, medium, and high intensity, you're going to benefit from all of them. Some days you're going to do low intensity. Some days you're going to do medium intensity, moderate intensity. And then doing low and moderate intensity allows you to feel good. And on a particular day, you get after it with some high intensity. And then you follow that with a moderate or low. And then you give yourself a high intensity day. So it's not this high intensity thing every day, because that's not sustainable. Most people will burn out, plateau. Nothing good's going to happen from that. So, but intensity matters. You're not going to achieve your goals without effort and busting your butt. That's why everyone in the world's not fit, if we're having a real conversation, because they want an easy avenue to pop some sort of a pill, to do some sort of magic machine that's going to do whatever. That's no one's achieving amazing levels of fitness like that. They're doing functional movements. They're following a strength and conditioning program that laid out the intentional proper variance to optimize the result, and they're working hard and also moderate and also low intensity days, but you're going to have those high intensity efforts. Just don't lie to yourself. And also, you're never going to lift more or move faster in a workout than you can move properly. Technique is paramount. And if the technique starts to degrade, you slow down, you lower the load, because this is a long-term game. We not only want you to get really fit and really strong and have a great quality of life and be independent living forever and dominate sport, the whole 9 yards, but we want your knees, back, and shoulders to be taken exceptional care of, because those are also mission critical to you having a happy, long, healthy life. So we're making smart decisions with our intensity, with our loading, the whole 9 yards. These things, the constantly varied, right, which is the laying out of all the different elements, loading, rep range, time domains, laying it out intelligently. The movement selection, understanding why we do the movements that we choose, those functional movements, and then working hard with the intensity. Those things, paired with a strong global community that will support you, and then paired with healthy diet and sleep, you're a rock star. Okay? So we're going to now encapsulate the constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. Now that we explained that, we don't have to worry about that. Let's just encapsulate that as the strength and conditioning program in which you choose. So if you choose the right strength and conditioning program, paired with a supportive community, you have a healthy diet, and you get some sleep, some good sleep, those 4 things, you are an absolute rock star. And things will go in a fantastic direction. And we're all looking for progress, not perfection. But if you're on that train that I just mentioned with those 4 elements, your train is heading in the right direction and going to the right station. We're constantly learning. We're working on removing our ego. We're making smart decisions. We understand that scaling or modifying a workout is not a bad thing. It's actually very cool and very intelligent. All these things come together. And so, yeah, that's basically it. And I'll end on this again, share this with your friends and family that are looking for an actual plain English definition of what it is we do and why we do it and why it's important and why it works. Hopefully that helps. But there's an example I've given before, and it's for example, let's say you have like a glass jar, and in that glass jar, you're going to put everything that you think is required for long-term health and fitness to get fitter, faster, and stronger, the whole 9 yards, right? The more important elements, and we're going to fill them with rocks. The more important elements are the larger rocks, and the less important elements are smaller pebbles or even grains of sand if they're not very important. There would be 4 big rocks in that jar that I just said. The strength and conditioning program that you select, that would be one of the big rocks. The community in which you join is another big rock, because without that support, there's a chance you won't stick with it. The best strength and conditioning program in the world only works if you keep showing up and doing it. So, rock number 1, the strength and conditioning program that you select. Obviously, I'd like you to select Linchpin, but do something. Whatever it is you do, do something. Don't choose to be a sloth on your couch. Do something. So number 1, the strength and conditioning program that you choose. Number 2, the community that is associated with that. Obviously, I'm biased and think Linchpin's is the best. The 3rd big rock, nutrition. And the 4th big rock, sleep. Those are the 4 big rocks. And those 4 big rocks, they're so big that you can't fit another big rock in there. Now you have to put smaller pebbles and sand and things of that nature. Now, of course, you could be like, well, I think there should be a 5th big rock, and that's managing stress or relationships. Like, we could play this sort of philosophical game. But point being, if you've got those 4 big rocks handled, you are 90% of the way there. And there's a really good chance that if something is not going well with your long-term health and fitness, that it's one of those 4 rocks. But what people like to do is focus on the smaller pebbles or the little pieces of sand, because those big 4 rocks, those are tough ones. Making sure you get enough sleep. It's easy to just stay up and be on Netflix. Nutrition is really hard, right? Strength and conditioning, I just told you that you're going to have to work hard in the gym. Well, who wants to do that? Well, special people that want to have a great life. But then you can focus on the little rocks or the pieces of sand, right? It's like, Let's see, you know why I'm not as fit as I want to be? I don't have the gear that I need. That's what it is. I need more gear. I tell you what, if I had more gear, this fitness thing would be so easy. Wrong. Lie. You can get fit with no gear at all. Just your body weight. We have just body weight only programming every day on Linchpin, and so do other people. So again, that's not an excuse. You don't need more gear. You actually need a very small amount of gear that doesn't take up a lot of room, and you can become an animal with your fitness. So, but that's something people will focus. When life gets a little easier or slower, it never will. Okay, so stop saying that. You just have to choose to get yourself in shape or choose not to get yourself in shape. But don't lie to yourself. It's not the gear, it's not the space that you have available, and it's not the time that you have. Somebody who's just as busy as you somehow makes it happen. So get that off your list as well. Whatever. I'd be stronger. I saw my favorite games athlete wear some sort of a mouth guard. That's why I'm not as strong as I could be. It's because I got to buy this mouth guard. It's not the mouth guard. Or the fill in the blank with the other whiz-bang piece of gear that social media is telling you that you need, that you don't need. Eat well, train hard, choose a good strength and conditioning program, do functional movements, get your rest, get some sleep, and watch things go in a great direction. It's not that you need the latest and greatest wearable piece of whatever in the world. You don't need that either. So, those are all pebbles or very small grains of sand, and people love to focus on those when they should focus on the big four. The strength and conditioning program that you chose, the community that is associated with that program to help keep you fired up and motivated, the nutritional choices that you're making, and the sleep and rest that you're giving your body. So, that's what we do at Linchpin. That's what we do in plain English. We'd love to have you on board. We got thousands of people from all around the world living this life, and things are going really well. And they're going to continue to go well because we're not going to do dumb stuff. We're going to help each other make smart decisions, and things are going to go great. We'd love to have you on board. Click the link in the bio. Get yourself a 30-day free trial. And 30 days is a long time. You can really poke around the community and see if I'm lying. See if it's everything that I said or see if it's something different. But I think you'll find that the people are amazing and the program works. So share this with a friend. Hopefully that served its function. Have a great day, and we'll talk later.